Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, we're in for a real treat. First off, let's give a round of applause to our band who'll be back playing for us during dinner. They're the Uptown Blues Band. We can do better than that, come on. This is the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's 5th annual A Voice Heritage Celebration presented by Anheuser-Busch Companies. My name is Andrea Rowan, and I'm the weekday morning anchor for WUSA. We're the CBS affiliate here in Washington, Channel 9 News. Thank you. And tonight I'm delighted to be your mistress of ceremony. Those of you who are techies out there, if you could take out your phones right now for me, please. Put them on silent. And then keep this in mind. We want you to tweet and let people know what's happening here. The hashtag for this event is hashtag CBCF A Voice BHM. Again, hashtag CBCF A Voice BHM. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. A. Shawniece Washington. She is President and Chief Executive Officer of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Incorporated. Her role as President and CEO caps a long-standing ties to CBCF. For more than 15 years, she has served in various capacities on the Foundation's Board of Directors, Corporate Advisory Council, and as a corporate funder. She served as board chair from March 2012 to February 2013, and previously as the board's vice chair from 2010 to 2012. Please, a warm round of applause for A. Shawniece Washington.
Thank you, Andrea, and welcome back. We're delighted to have you join us again, and especially for your continued support, especially on the occasion of our 5th anniversary. Friends, supporters, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, and members of the media, good evening, and welcome to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's 5th annual A Voice Heritage Celebration. This annual event is an opportunity for us to commemorate Black History Month, celebrate African American excellence, and honor those who work to preserve African American legacy. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to each of you and acknowledge a very few special individuals who are here with us this evening. Beginning with our chairman, Representative Shaka Fattah, who was honored earlier this evening by Radio One, and Kathy Hughes, founder of Radio One, who also happens to be a member of the CBCF Board of Directors. And our chairman was honored as a Living History honoree. And there are others who are either here or will be joining us this evening. From the White House, Mr. Johannes Abraham, Special Assistant to the President and Chief of Staff for the Office of Public Engagement and Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. Heather Foster, Advisor, White House Office of Public Engagement. House Democratic Caucus Chairman, Representative Javier Becerra, California, and former Congresswoman Dr. Jill Long Thompson, Chair of the Board and CEO for the Farm Credit Administration, appointed by President Obama in March 2010, and the Honorable Judge Greg Mathis, CBCF. Song for you, Judge. CBCF board member. And I would also like to acknowledge some of our community partners who are here with us this evening, because as the foundation works hard to eliminate disparities in the African American community, we certainly cannot do that without strong partnerships with other organizations. Dr. Elsie Scott, immediate past president of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and founding director of the Ron Walters Leadership and Public Policy Center. Mr. Mark Morial, if he is not here yet, he will be joining us, president and CEO of the National Urban League. Chanel Hardy, Senior Vice President and Director of the National Urban League Policy Institute, and Mr. George Lambert, the newly appointed President and CEO of the Greater Washington Urban League, who I had the pleasure of meeting earlier this evening, as well as Mr. Spencer Overton, Interim President and CEO for the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. And finally, join me in thanking all of the individuals that I just named, but most especially our planning committee. Many of the members have been with us several years, and hopefully you are enjoying so far and will continue to enjoy the experience this evening. But please join me in giving them all a round of applause. Tonight, we are proud to honor former Congresswoman Eva Clayton, the first African-American woman elected to Congress from North Carolina with the CBC Member Archives Award. Our Distinguished Corporation Award will be presented to Comcast NBC Universal for their long-standing commitment to diversity and inclusion, including their Internet Essentials program, which brings broadband access to all Americans. And we will pay tribute to the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library for its outstanding efforts to preserve records and artifacts about President Johnson's tremendous role in ensuring equal rights for African Americans by presenting the library with a Distinguished Organization Award. This evening's celebration is particularly momentous as it marks the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. As we look towards the next 50 years, we are reminded that we cannot build a better future without a strong understanding of our past, which is made possible in part from the generosity of this evening's presenting sponsor, the Anheuser-Busch Companies. I would like to thank Anheuser-Busch for their continued support and unwavering commitment to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the A Voice Project. Yes. And I would also like to thank our friends at ExxonMobil for their support and ask you to join me in a round of applause for all of our sponsors whose names you will see scrolling on the monitors around the screen, as well as listed in the program booklet in front of you. So please join me. The CBCF A Voice Virtual Library is a premier source of information about historical and contemporary African American policy issues important to researchers, academics, educators, and students. Please join me in honoring the legacy of African American leadership by pledging your support to A Voice through your generous donations. Each and every contribution brings us one step closer to preserving the rich history of the political and legislative contributions of African Americans for generations to come. And when we speak of future generations, we are talking about some of the young adults that are here this evening, participating in the CBCF's Communication and Emerging Leaders Internship programs, as well as our Fellows Program. These young leaders provide hope and promise for a brighter future for all of us, and I have no doubt that in his or her own way will become future leaders, pioneers, and trailblazers in public service. I have great confidence in their abilities and look forward to the day when we can record their contributions in the A Voice Library. Interns and fellows, please stand up so that we can recognize you. I know that you are throughout the room. Wave your hand, if you will, and there we are over here. Let's give them a round of encouraging support. Together we can and will build upon this legacy of leadership to empower future generations. I hope that you enjoy your evening and the very special program that we have planned for you tonight. And we will begin with a video followed by remarks from our chairman, Congressman Shaka Fattah. Thank you very much.
A Voice is unique because nobody else has an online virtual library that is primarily focused on the contributions and the role of African Americans in the legislative process.
A Voice has grown every year since it has launched in 2006.
I think A Voice is particularly relevant because it works to preserve important aspects of African American culture and history, in particular as it relates to the policy making process in Washington, D.C.
When you go to the A Voice website, you'll see features like oral histories of former Congressional Black Caucus members primary source documents from important legislation that has been passed in the United States, audio clips of speeches on the House floor, as well as important facts and other documents that detail the African American legislative accomplishments.
When I showed up in '94, when I got elected in '94, I showed up in January '95. One of the first things I did was, because I was appointed to the House Administration Committee, which handles the workings of the Capitol. Because I said, well, look, we got 1,500 paintings over in the Capitol, and there's not one African American. So I, through my work on the committee, I got them to put a portrait of an African American, the first African American to ever be elected to Congress, over in the Capitol by order of the House Administration Committee. So now that may seem like a symbolic thing, but if you think about the millions of school children who take tours through the Capitol, and if they never ever see anybody who looks like them, out of all these portraits in the United States Capitol, you know, it kind of subliminally suggests to them that they are not equal to, or that they at least are not in the mix of helping to make or create our country as it might exist today.
The exhibits on the A Voice website are the origins of the Congressional Black Caucus, the making of the Martin Luther King Holiday Bill, environmental justice, the Voting Rights Act, the anti-apartheid movement, the women of the CBC. You will see a For Educators section which contains lesson units based on these primary documents for educators and students of high school and college age.
I think A Voice is unique because it provides a central location to where you can really plug in to CBCF. It's also on Facebook, which is very different and innovative, and it's a way for the younger crowd to really get plugged in.
A Voice is accessible 24 hours a day via the internet. The web address is www.avoiceonline.org.
We develop leaders, inform policy, and educate the public at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
Well, good evening. Let me first and foremost acknowledge my colleagues on the board of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Give the board a big round of applause. This is a tremendous occasion in which we're going to have a chance to honor, first of all, an extraordinary public servant, but even a better human being, Eva Clayton, who I learned so much from during her time in the Congress. And we're also going to acknowledge the great work of Comcast Universal in the LBJ Library. But in truth, this is the 5th anniversary of A Voice. This is one of the most important projects of the foundation, and that is creating this digital library that helps researchers and educators understand the contributions that African ancestor Americans have made in terms of the making of federal laws. And this is so vitally important. So we want to thank all of you for your support. I want to add my voice, pun intended, to the major sponsors, Anheuser-Busch, Don, his efforts, but also ExxonMobil. Lonnie, I want to thank you. This support for this activity is truly appreciated. I know you've heard from our dynamic and really all of the credit for the work of the foundation. I get a lot of the credit, but the truth is she does all the work. Charnice, give her another round of applause for her great leadership of the foundation. So there's so much that I could say, but we want to eat dinner, right? So I'm not going to say it all. But I do want to bring out a young lady who actually provides the day-to-day leadership for 40-plus members of Congress who are African Americans. This is the gentle lady from the state of Ohio, Marcia Fudge, who's just returned from an international trip. I saw her early this morning. Now we're together late at night. I can't shake her. No one can outwork her. And she has the tenacity, whether it is to speak aggressively on the issues of the day, whether to the President of the United States or to our colleagues in the Congress. and actually, more often than not, to our colleagues right in the Congressional Black Caucus, she keeps all of us straight. Welcome, Marcia Fudge, the great Congresswoman and Chairwoman from Ohio. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Congressman Fattah. It is my pleasure to welcome you tonight for the 5th Annual A Voice Heritage Celebration. Joining us tonight are the following members of the Congressional Black Caucus. The Honorable John Conyers, please stand as I call your name. John Conyers, Jr. The Honorable Eddie Bernice Johnson. The Honorable Robert Bobby Scott. Obviously, you've seen Shaka Fattah. Congressman Elijah Cummings. Representative Donna Christensen. Honorable Barbara Lee. I see Gwen Moore coming in as we speak. Gwen Moore. The Honorable G.K. Butterfield. You will see Emmanuel Cleaver in just a moment. The Honorable Yvette Clarke. And I don't think I missed anyone. And of course, myself. Thank you so much for being here. The mission of A Voice is to preserve the rich history of political and legislative contributions made by African American members of Congress to our nation and to our world. Given the significant role of African American members of Congress in our history, preserving congressional papers and our historical materials remains a priority. Honoring the legacy of CBC members and sharing the results of our work is critical to the advancement of African Americans and other underserved communities. The tools in the A Voice Virtual Library Project are used to educate young people in our schools and beyond. And remembering our rich history of perseverance and progress is more important now than ever before. Each year, the A Voice Heritage Celebration honors individuals and institutions that embody the spirit and mission of A Voice, including former African American members of Congress, and one of my sheroes tonight, Representative Eva Clayton of North Carolina, who will be honored this evening. On behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus, I thank the CBCF for your work, and I thank you all for joining us this evening. We appreciate your continued support.
Thank you, Representative Fudge. Now, please join me in welcoming the Director of National Affairs for Anheuser-Busch Companies, Mr. Don Calloway. Don is also a member of the Foundation's Corporate Advisory Council. This is Anheuser-Busch's second year as title sponsor for the Heritage Celebration. Please welcome Don Calloway.
This is 3 years running. Y'all know what to expect now. Now, Madam President, as I look at the program, I'm very concerned. I see that I am in between the immediate chairman and the current chairman and the immediate past chairman, who happen to be the best two speakers in the caucus. Y'all don't love me. You just refuse to do me right. So if you walk into any Anheuser-Busch brewery across the world, be it in Lacey Clay's St. Louis, be it in Representative Donald Payne's Newark, or in Sheila Jackson Lee's Houston facility, you're immediately inundated with Anheuser-Busch legacy items on the walls, all over the merchandising that we have. And that's because we are every day concerned with telling our uniquely American story. It's a wonderful story of German immigrants who came to this country with nothing but ingenuity and an idea to create the best beers in the world. And that's why for the third year now running, we've decided that of all the things the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation does every year, we want to make the A Voice Project the one that we involve as our own, because it's about telling the African American story. We as a company are highly concerned with telling our story, and we want to partner with this caucus in any way we can in telling our story. We have to tell the story that because there was a Lewis Stokes, Chairwoman Marcia Fudge now is. We have to tell the story that because there was a Mickey Leland, Sheila Jackson Lee is. Because there was a Ron Dellums, Barbara Lee is. Because there was a Congressman John Conyers, well, he still is. But we also have to tell the story about how we still have so much work to do. We have to tell the story that just about right this minute, 7:17 p.m. 2 years ago today, one of our babies was killed just for walking home. We have to tell the story that just in 2013, Renisha McBride was shot in the face for asking for help. Jonathan Harris killed by police for asking for help. We have to tell the story that Jordan Davis was killed because he wouldn't turn his music down. And that's the story of African Americans, our victories and also our losses and the fight ahead. At Anheuser-Busch, you will always find a corporate partner in us when it comes to telling our story. So with that, on behalf of the 120,000 global employees of the world's greatest brewer, we offer a toast of cheers to this mighty caucus, to the victories of the past, to all of your contributions of the present, and to the struggles that lie ahead in the future. Cheers and God bless.
Thank you, Don, and cheers to Anheuser-Busch for your support of CBCF and the A Voice Project. Now, please welcome Representative Emanuel Cleaver II, who hails from the 5th Congressional District of Missouri. He will give us tonight's invocation.
Please bow your heads, please. Bless, O Lord, this food to our use and us to your service. And keep us, O Lord, we pray, every day to be mindful of those who work 40 hours a week and still qualify for SNAP. And those who, through no fault of their own, lost their jobs and are without unemployment insurance. And those black children who are now underground because mean men claimed stand your ground. Nevertheless, Lord, we thank you for food in a world where many walk in hunger, for faith in a world where many walk in fear, for friends and sponsors in a world where many walk alone. And now, Lord, be present at each table, even the tables where they've already begun to eat before this blessing. We give you thanks. Amen.
To present the CBC Member Archives Award, I'd like to introduce Representative G.K. Butterfield. Representative Butterfield came to Congress in 2004 representing the 1st Congressional District of North Carolina. He serves in the Democratic leadership as Chief Deputy Whip and as first Vice Chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. He sits on the influential Committee on Energy and Commerce as the 8th most senior Democrat on the Health Subcommittee. In addition, he serves as a member of the subcommittees of Communication and Technology and Oversight and Investigations. But before he comes out and joins us, let's take a look at our awardee, the Honorable Eva M. Clayton.
Mr. Speaker, for purposes of debate only, I yield to the distinguished president of the freshman class, the lady from North Carolina, Ms. Clayton.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the rule.
Eva McPherson Clayton was born in Savannah, Georgia. Representative Clayton became North Carolina's first African-American representative since 1901 and its first African-American woman to hold national public office. Clayton claimed her seat in the 102nd Congress in November 1992, but did not receive committee assignments until the 103rd Congress convened in January 1993. She won spots on the Agriculture and Small Business Committees and eventually became the ranking Democratic member on the Agriculture Committee's Operations, Oversight, Nutrition, and Forestry Subcommittee.
I introduced H.R. 3437, the Eva Clayton Fellows Program Act, and this legislation would enable the development of solutions to world hunger and confront food insecurity head-on. Food insecurity is not a partisan issue. I urge my colleagues to join me in this fight. Thank you.
Rather, I come from the country, Maxine comes from the inner city of Los Angeles. Our souls connect on equality and opportunity, so there isn't a liberal view on that. It's just a moral view on that.
Representative Clayton became a staunch defender of the rural and agricultural interests of her district. reviving the Rural Caucus, and garner support from her colleagues to pledge continued federal aid to farmers, new rural jobs, and technology initiatives. She continues to work tirelessly for job training and affordable housing. After retiring from office, Representative Clayton continues to advocate for agricultural productivity worldwide. Her archives are located at her alma mater in Johnson C. Smith University's James B. Duke Memorial Library. A wife, a mother, and a lifelong advocate for her community, we salute you, Representative Eva Clayton.
Please welcome Representative Butterfield.
Good evening. Let me begin this evening by thanking the Foundation for including me in this very auspicious occasion. I had the privilege of serving on the Foundation board for several years, and those of you who are connected with the Foundation will know that when you serve on the board, there are term limits. And so I reached my term limit and had to leave the board, but I am satisfied. I am really satisfied that the Foundation is in good hands. And so thank you, not just to the leadership, but to those of you who work for the Foundation for keeping this Foundation healthy. But this evening, it is my honor to present the 2014 CBC Member Archives Award to my friend and constituent, Eva McPherson Clayton. Where do I start? Well, I first met Eva Clayton in 1968, before some of you were born. That fellow Calloway from Anheuser-Busch, probably before you were born, young man. But I met Eva in 1968. You will recall that the Voting Rights Act became law in 1965. The Voting Rights Act eliminated the literacy test, and somehow we expected African Americans in North Carolina to become registered voters in large numbers overnight. Well, it did not happen. Many were fearful of registering to vote. Many simply didn't believe that the Voting Rights Act made it unlawful for election officials to erect impediments to voting. And so in 1968, we convinced Eva Clayton to step forward. And she stepped forward and decided to run for Congress. A lot of people, even in North Carolina, Charlie, do not remember that. Eva Clayton ran for Congress in 1968. She ran to stimulate and to encourage voter registration. She was defeated. She was defeated by the incumbent, but her candidacy nearly doubled voter registration in our congressional district. But that was the beginning. That was the beginning of an illustrious career of public service. As the years went on, Eva would become a county commissioner. She would become assistant secretary of our Department of Natural Resources and Community Development for 4 years. And following a series of court challenges to North Carolina redistricting, she, in 1992, was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, beginning 10 years of distinguished service. While in the House, Eva was a force on the Committee on Agriculture and was the voice for food assistance for all Americans. She was one of the architects of the 2002 Farm Bill. She was president of her freshman class and served as chair of the CBC Foundation. The only fault that I found with Eva Clayton is that she is the direct opposite of Charlie Rangel. She does not cuss. And as I sit in CBC meetings from time to time and hear all of the language, not just from my friend Mr. Rangel, but from others, I said, how did Eva make it in this room with her straight language? But thank you, Eva, for that so much. But following Eva's retirement from Congress in 2002, Eva Clayton became Assistant Director General of the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization based in Rome, Italy, where she remained for 3 years. In that capacity, Eva was on the world stage advocating for the elimination of world hunger. Congresswoman Clayton is now back in her beloved home community, where she continues to advocate for issues that she cares so deeply. Eva has been married to the love of her life, Theosius Clayton, who gave me my first job out of law school, and he's here with her tonight. They've been married for more than 50 long years. They are the parents of 4 children and 6 grandchildren. My friends, it is for these and other reasons that tonight we recognize a great American, my friend and your friend, Congresswoman Eva Clayton.
Thank you, Representative George Kenneth Butterfield. I'm the only one who can say that. He's belovedly known as GK. He is indeed the effective and caring congressman of the 1st Congressional District, and as he said, a lifelong personal friend of ours. In fact, we are friends of his family. By the way, this is not my note, but his father made it possible for me to have a campaign facility. His father was the dentist, a dear friend of ours. To my very good friend and chair of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Representative Chaka Fattah, and the president and CEO, Shanice Washington, thank you for all that you do. To the CBC outstanding and dedicated staff, board of directors, members of Congress, and former colleagues who are here, ladies and gentlemen, I bring you greetings from the state of North Carolina, the birthplace of Moral Monday, because struggle continues. The work that people in this room are a part of make it possible for a Southern matured, matured woman from rural North Carolina or a young man from the inner city of Philadelphia to achieve their dream. You do great work, and our nation is better for your service. I am honored and humbled to be this year's recipient of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Members Archive Award. Receiving this award from the CBC is especially humbling to me, given the Foundation's rich legacy of advocating equality and justice for all Americans, as well as your promotion of participation by informed citizens in our country's political process. Over the years, you have inspired countless college students to take their place as tomorrow's emerging leaders. CBC interns and fellows program give these young people the courage, the network, and the experience to achieve their greatness. So I am very grateful to be associated with the work that you do in order to provide these leaders while you are preparing them for tomorrow's leadership. Hopefully, the CBC's rich legacy has uniquely prepared this great organization to meet and master the challenges and the opportunities of tomorrow as well as today. As our world becomes more technologically connected and interdependent, the CBC must intensify its advocacy for equal connectivity for all communities, rural or urban, civic participation by all Americans, encouragement and preparation of more young progressive leaders, and collaboration with others to ensure that all people have adequate food, health care, access to good education, and the opportunity to work and to contribute to the global society. Rest assured, the road ahead may come with many challenges, but know that the seed you sow in the young people today will certainly reap harvest tomorrow. I look forward to embracing our great future together. Your impact on me will continue my involvement in my local community in rural North Carolina and will hopefully lend a greater impact for our collective future. I will continue to be an advocate for the poor and to advocate for a productive and fair agricultural sector. Likewise, I will work internationally, indeed, to fight hunger and for health care and to promote human development. And challenges as they may be, I want to make sure that I continue to speak to you, to write to people like you are, those who are leaders, to make sure you understand that your best policy is indeed to advocate for other human beings. May God continue to bless each of you with the determination to fight for justice and for peace. May God bless you all.
A tremendous legacy Representative Clayton leaves, but as you can hear from her, it's the chapters are still to be written, what she's doing in the present and future for all of us on behalf of hunger and civil rights and of access to health care. Thank you. And it's amazing, her archive is available to view for future generations to research, learn, and share. Now I'd like to invite Representative Shaka Fattah to come forward to present the Distinguished Corporation of Voice Heritage Awardee. But first, we want to take a look at the achievements of our honoree, Comcast NBC Universal.
I'm a mother and a grandmother and a great-grandmother. As long as you learn new skills, you're viable. I don't care what age you are. When I think about people that don't have access to internet or the computer or computer skills, I think about people that are going to be in for a rough ride.
The digital divide is something that is such a huge problem around the country, and it's something that just needs to be bridged in order to really combat poverty, because so much of the time, if you're on one side of that divide where there isn't that technology and there isn't access and there isn't that knowledge and education, then in a lot of ways you're left behind. The most important part of Internet Essentials, in my opinion, is the fact that it brings together different partners, the nonprofit sector, the corporate sector, to really provide access to people who don't necessarily have access to the internet. And they also don't have access to the training that is so critical.
The main areas of service that we have are employment, housing, and public benefits. And most of the things that we do, if not all the things that we do here, is on the computer.
Curriculum is basically basic internet skills, how to use the internet, how to use the computer, how to get online.
So let's click on this first one up here in the top left corner, the ESC button, or the escape key.
I'm 53. Right now I'm unemployed. I'm slow on moving in technology. Many times I had someone to help me in accessing different sites for jobs, job availability. It's just opening up a lot of doors.
They're trying to get a job, and sometimes that means getting an education before getting the job. And in both scenarios, you need that knowledge of how to use computers.
The most important part of Internet Essentials digital literacy is the practical hands-on experience that the clients get when they come to one of these workshops, because they get to test drive the internet, they get to utilize the computer, and they get to have their questions answered. You did it right.
I feel that it's providing hope for many people. It provided hope for me. There's a whole world out there waiting for you. And don't let age be a factor, because I feel that we need to always learn, and not having knowledge about the internet, you don't even realize and see how you're limiting yourself.
Internet Essentials is really important to our community because it provides the resources that people are looking for to improve their own skills and from there improve their own lives. So we're really grateful for the support of Internet Essentials and Comcast to do that.
Never give up. Continue to push till you get to the point where you need to be. It have changed my life, and it's changing my life.
Thank you. Let's give our Mistress of Ceremonies a big round of applause. And I want to say a number of things. I want to say them as concisely as I can, but Brian Roberts, who leads Comcast, we were together to see the Saints beat the Eagles, unfortunately, in the playoffs. But As you can tell, Comcast keeps going forward, and it is a major presence in Philadelphia, the largest employers in my district, and building a brand new tower and merging with Time Warner. A lot going on, but we acknowledge Comcast Universal today because of its corporate citizenship, its public-spirited work, its efforts in terms of internet essentials, its help with the Hurricane Katrina, its internationally recognized Comcast Cares Day, all of the great work that's being done. And there's a young man here who is with Comcast, Brett Perkins, who serves on the Temple board and used to be with AmeriHealth and Mercy Healthcare, but has been with Comcast since 2001 and is an extraordinary leader. He's Vice President for External Affairs and Government Relations for the company. He represents in every important way what Comcast means in terms of creating opportunities. And we've seen it, and we're going to see even more of it. And that's why the foundation is taking the time to acknowledge the work of Comcast Universal with the Distinguished Corporation Award. So please give Mr. Perkins a big round of applause as he comes forward, and Comcast Universal for all that it has done, and much more importantly, all that it's going to do going forward. Thank you very much. And we're going to present this award now to Mr. Perkins on behalf of Comcast Universal from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation.
Good. They were joking back there they needed to do some makeup so I wouldn't ruin the picture between my head and my eyes. Good evening, and thank you to my Congressman, Shaka Fattah. I'd like to acknowledge my colleague and friend, Earl Jones, who I know all in this room know. So it's a special evening for the entire family at Comcast NBC Universal, and on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Congressman Shaka Fattah, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, and the other members of the Congressional Black Caucus for honoring Comcast with the Distinguished Corporation Award. So this honor is all the more meaningful coming as it does as part of the A Voice Heritage celebration of Black History Month, with its theme of civil rights in America. Last year, we were enthused to produce the His Dream, Our Stories project commemorating the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and the legacy of Dr. King. This series of online videos features interviews with people who fought for justice and equality in the years leading up to the march and in the 50 years since then. The impact of those videos was strengthened by stories from members of Congress, including many folks in this room: Charlie Rangel, John Lewis, John Dingell, Jim Clyburn, Steny Hoyer, Terry Sewell. And we're grateful for all of your participation, and we applaud the work of the Foundation's Virtual Library Project in creating a database of information on the contributions of African Americans to shaping public policy in this country. It's a great resource for studying Black history. But everybody here realizes that the struggle for civil rights has not faded into history. Not yet. We've come a long way in assuring all citizens equal rights, but we're still a long way from offering all citizens equal opportunity. In that context, we see access to digital technology as a major civil rights issue for the 21st century. A home broadband connection and the knowledge of how to use that connection are fundamental requirements for living in the digital age. As the nation's largest broadband provider, we know that we have a responsibility to help close the gap those who have and those who do not have access to this critical technology. It's especially gratifying for us to have our digital literacy and engagement programs cited as part of our Distinguished Corporation Award. I think many of you know that Internet Essentials has become our company's signature community investment priority. It's the nation's largest and most comprehensive broadband adoption program, something that I take incredibly serious since I spent the 2 years since we launched it working on making sure that we could roll this out to the entire country and get more low-income families connected to the internet. It provides eligible families with low-cost broadband service, options for free digital literacy training, and the ability to purchase reduced-price computer. Simple but important tools if you are going to participate in the digital economy that is before us. In the 3 years since we've launched this program, we've helped to connect more than 1 million Americans. It's 250,000 families who we've gotten connected at home. Thank you. So we've come a long way in a relatively short time, but the struggle for digital equality, just like the struggle for civil rights, is far from over. So we salute the historic and continued efforts of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation in supporting education, access, jobs, and opportunity for African Americans. And we thank you for joining us in the struggle for making sure that all Americans have access to the digital future. So we deeply appreciate this honor, and thank you very much.
And again, we thank Comcast NBC Universal for helping to narrow that digital gap. Our next presenters are Lonnie Johnson of ExxonMobil and Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson. They will be coming to present the Distinguished Organization of Voice Heritage Award. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about them. Lonnie Johnson is Senior Director of Federal Relations at ExxonMobil Corporation and a member of the Foundation's Board of Directors. Congresswoman Eddie Bernice Johnson is serving her 11th term representing the 30th Congressional District of Texas, which is entirely within Dallas County. She is currently a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and has been a member of that panel since first being elected to Congress in 1992. The Congresswoman is also the highest-ranking Texan on the committee. She also serves on the Aviation Subcommittee, the Highways and Transit Subcommittee, and Water Resources and Environment Subcommittee. A member of the CBCF committee that conceptualized the A Voice project, Representative Johnson continues to serve on its advisory committee. Now, before they join us, we want you to watch a video about our next awardee, the Lyndon Baines Johnson Presidential Library.
To initiate. Well, I'm going to support them all, and you can count on that, and I'm going to do my best to get other men to do likewise, and I'll have to have y'all's help. I never needed more than I do now.
Well, you know you have it, and just feel free to call on us for anything.
Thank you so much, Martin.
All right.
Call me when you...
To the family.
I sure will. Call me when you're down here next time.
I certainly will.
Let's get together, and any suggestions you got, bring them in.
Fine. I certainly will do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A man driven to succeed, to overcome his impoverished start in life. He was determined to pave the path for change, go to Washington, and get things done. He was about compromise and coming together to solve problems. And yes, he was tenacious and there was the Johnson treatment. But he had conviction, passion, and an irresistible persuasion with an eye on tomorrow. As president, LBJ's weapon of choice was the phone. He had phones installed all over the White House, in bathrooms, under dinner tables, in cars. As special counsel to the president recounts, if he were alive today, he'd have 3 or 4 cell phones going at once. He believed in the future and knew the present called for immense change. In his words, if future generations are to remember us more with gratitude than sorrow, We must achieve more than just the miracles of technology. We must also leave them a glimpse of the world as it was created, not just as it looked when we got through with it. His legacy stands apart as one that accomplished more effective legislation than any other president in history. He was a trailblazer, a pioneer, and brought Washington together to get things done that have shaped our country and continue to define it for new generations.
Please welcome Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson and ExxonMobil's Lonnie Johnson to the stage.
Well, on behalf of ExxonMobil and our many employees, as well as our chairman, it's indeed an honor to be here and to support CBCF and the Voice program. It's really, I mean, as I look back, I'm starting to get nostalgic now because after 5 years of being here, I am leaving, going back to Houston, and so I know I'm going to miss a lot about this place. But it's great to look back at programs like this. It's all about preserving history and preserving all the things that as you go through day by day, you sort of take for granted. But it's important to be able to look back on that. And nothing can be better than, in terms of organizations to recognize, than the LBJ Library, because it is all about preserving the history of President Johnson. And many of the things that I frankly did not know, it's because of people, organizations like The Voice and the LBJ Library that preserve those things and let us go back and revisit it and refresh our recollection, or sometimes learn things all anew. So it is indeed a pleasure to be here, to be a sponsor of this event. I hope others who have not sponsored in the past will continue to sponsor. And I don't know who my replacement is going to be, but the one thing I will ask that we continue to do is support this organization. And I thank CBCF and Marsha Fudge and Dr. Cleaver, all the members. You've been so helpful for me over the last 5 years. So thank you, and thanks for allowing ExxonMobil to be a part of the program.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm delighted to be here, and I had to get this card because I wanted to acknowledge that being a Texan, all Texans think that's the best state in the world. I was reared to think that, and when I was grown, before I realized there were a few things were not so perfect. But let me acknowledge the foundation and simply say to all of my colleagues, and some of you were not here at the earlier introduction. So all of you that have come in since you were introduced, please raise your hand or stand. I want the audience to know who I work with every day, the greatest Americans I know, members of the CBC. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would not be able to stand here without these people, and I certainly would not be happy. And to see that Eva, my classmate, being honored tonight, it was a special pleasure. This is the 5th Annual Congressional Black Caucus Foundation AVOICE Heritage Celebration. When I was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, I asked Dale to fund a program that would make our history be a living document for life. And this is AVOICE. And so I thank you, the foundation, for continuing this program, and thank all of you who have come in to assist in helping to keep it going financially. Situated on a 30-acre site at the University of Texas campus in Austin, Texas, the library houses 45 million pages of historical documents, 650,000 photos, and 5,000 hours of recordings from President Johnson's political career, including about 643 hours of his recorded telephone conversations. His favorite phrase was, "Come, let's reason together." The iconic 10-story building was designed by an award-winning architect, Gordon Baumschaft, and features a great hall with a stunning 4-story glass-encased view of the archives collection. A centerpiece in the Great Hall of the LBJ Library is the photo engraving mural by the artist Naomi Savage. Approximately 100,000 visitors from around the world visit the LBJ Library exhibits each year. The museum collection of the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library and Museum contains more than 54,000 objects donated by the President and Mrs. Johnson and their family, close friends, associates, and the American people. Next month, the Lyndon Baines Johnson's Presidential Library is planning a celebration of the 50th anniversary of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, a law which President Johnson is credited with steering through Congress. There will be 3 presidents. There will be President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, and our current President Obama, who will be there. I'm not sure I'm permitted to say that, but I know that's true. We must not forget that President Johnson, often referred to as the master of the Senate, helped enact the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the Medicaid, Medicare, and the first large-scale federal aid to education, and the 1963 Civil Rights Act. Throughout my 2 decades as a congresswoman from Texas and over 40 years in public service, I've been fortunate to interact with the president's 2 daughters and his wife. They were personal friends, and I was just saying backstage, it didn't occur to me that these were great people because they were just friends of mine. Linda and Lucy. Lucy was a volunteer in my office when I was a state representative 40 years ago. And then I met Joseph Califano, the deputy press secretary, Tom Johnson, who came to Dallas and was head of the Dallas Times-Herald, who made sure that I was a part of everything and breaking many barriers that only men and white men had been a part of before. Bill Moyers, Jim Lear, that were PBS, Liz Carpenter, who was Mrs. Johnson's press secretary, and Bob Schieffer, CBS. And so that's why I was very pleased that the mistress of ceremony tonight is from CBS. CBS is Lyndon Johnson. Walter Cronkite. These are old Texans that I knew at my beginning and that I was made a part of the LBJ network. As a matter of fact, it was Mrs. Johnson who said, when I was running for the first time, use EBJ all the way. So that became my theme because she equated with LBJ, EBJ. So that was truly meaningful to me, and that's why it's so meaningful to me tonight to present this Distinguished Organization Award on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation to the Lyndon Baines Johnson Presidential Library. The person who is director of that library and museum is Mark Updegrove, but he is not going to be here tonight. As a matter of fact, it's going to be the spouse of Lonnie Birch, who is now head of the African American Museum. But Mrs. Birch, in her own right, Maria Marable Birch, is Director of Education and Programs at the National Archives and knows as much about Lyndon Johnson, that collection, as anyone else. So, Mrs. Birch. While she's coming, I want to say that one of President Johnson's chief assistants was pregnant and had a child while she was in that role and didn't have time to really think too much about how or what she was going to name her new son. She named him Lyndon, and he's here tonight. Lyndon Bouger, who is named for Lyndon Baines Johnson. Just raise your hand or stand.
Everybody looking right here? Here we go.
Good evening. Good evening to our guests this evening, the congressional members, as well as Shanice Washington, Director of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and the A-Voice Virtual Library Project. I'm honored and pleased to be here this evening to accept this award on behalf of the National Archives, the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library and Museum, and its director, Mark Updegrove. Unfortunately, Mark could not be with us this evening to personally accept the award. However, Mark wants me to convey to you that the library is honored to receive this distinguished organizational award from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's A-Voice Virtual Library Project. The library and museum mission is to educate the American public about the leadership of President Johnson and his commitment to improving the lives of all Americans by taking on issues like education, healthcare, the environment, women's rights, and of course, civil rights. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, as we all know, is a landmark piece of civil rights legislation that President Johnson tirelessly sought passage through Congress. The library and museum every day enable visitors to learn about the passage of the Civil Rights Act and President Johnson's legacy through its exhibitions and the documents it preserves, thus ensuring that the legislative history is accessible to all communities nationwide. Once again, to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the A-Voice Project, we thank you, we thank you. And I will also like to end by also thanking Adrena Eiffel, who is always sort of behind the scenes. A little story about Adrena. She actually introduced me to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation as well as the A-Voice Project. I had the opportunity to work very closely with Adrena. And if you go online and look at some of the educational online resources for teachers, I help Adrena to research and write and prepare those resources for teachers. And it was truly a project from the heart. And I look forward to continuing my partnership with Adrena through the National Archives. And hopefully we will have the opportunity to work with her to host many students that she often brings to the archives and introduce them to A-Voice online. Thank you.
And congratulations again to all of our honorees. Please, a warm round of applause to the LBJ Presidential Library, NBC, Comcast, Universal, and of course, former Representative Eva Clayton. We do have a little bit of business. I want to make sure that the awardees, members, sponsors all gather at the Step and Repeat for formal photographs. And we also want to acknowledge Representative Xavier Becerra and Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, who have joined us this evening. Yay! Other important piece of business. We have done very well. It's just about 9 o'clock. The evening is not completely over, but we do want to remind you that the coat check and valet will close at 9:30 tonight. Miss that time, you freeze on the way home on Metro, okay? All right. This is my 5th year serving as your MC. I am always amazed at the accomplishments of our honorees, and I always learn so much, and that's what A-Voice is all about, having these archives so that we can learn about our past, our present, and anticipate our future. So thank you again for having me back, and I hope to see you again next year. To close out our evening, please welcome again Shanice Washington, CBCF President.
Well, good evening again, everyone. I hope everyone is enjoying themselves, has enjoyed themselves. I want to thank you again, and thanks to all of our honorees and our sponsors. And if you enjoyed yourself, and I hope, I know you did, right? And I hope, and I know you did. Okay. Excellent. Then I want to ask you to do 3 things. The first is share. Tell your family, friends, and colleagues about A Voice, our virtual library. AVOICEONLINE.org, so that they can experience the phenomenal work of African Americans in Congress. The second is care. Show your support by donating to A Voice, and this will enable more students to learn about the African American legislative experience and history. And finally, I am asking our CBC members, as our chairman did, to help us preserve their legacies by sharing their legislative works with the library or archive so that it may be preserved for generations to come. Again, I thank you for your support of the 2014 Heritage Celebration. Remember to retrieve your coat and vehicle if you are valet parked by 9:30 p.m. 9:30 p.m. Honorees, CBC members, and sponsors, please join us at the step and repeat over to my right. And before I say good night and invite you to join us as part of the dessert reception, I would like to invite our Mistress of Ceremonies to the stage, Miss Andrea Roan. Let's give her a resounding. Andrea has been with us. This is our 5th anniversary, and she has been with us, if not for all 5 years, certainly for, I think it has been all 5 years. So, you know, we celebrate A Voice, but we also celebrate Andrea and her love and passion for the foundation and for A Voice. And so join me in saluting this phenomenal woman, and please accept this token of our appreciation for all that you have done for us. We love you.
Love this speech.
Thank you.
I'll see you starting 4:25 tomorrow morning.
Okay, everyone, enjoy the rest of your evening. We've got a wonderful dessert reception planned. And again, sponsors, honorees, CBC members, please join us over there for photos. Have a good evening.
Why is an event like this personally important to you?
Well, it gives people an opportunity to see that history being made. The honors have been given, Eva Clayton and others, the history they've made, and to my colleagues in the Congressional Black Caucus of making history today. And also, we're here on the shoulders of those that came before us who are still making history, and it's just a great evening.
Well, out of all the things that the foundation does, A Voice is important to us because we're a company that's steeped in history and legacy. And that's what the A Voice Project is. It's literally maintaining the legacy of the Congressional Black Caucus, those African-American members who've served in Congress since the 1800s. So we're very proud to support that kind of project. As a company who appreciates our own history, we look to support efforts and endeavors of the foundation that really preserve the history of such a special caucus.
These days, unfortunately, a lot of our young people don't recognize the greatness of our culture in the past and in the present. And so this is important to me personally because I recognize that once we know who we are confident in moving forward and making a difference in society. And learning our past strengthens us for the future.
Oh, absolutely. I thought it was tremendous. I have to admit I'm part of the group that put on the event, and so perhaps I'm a little biased, but I think it was really, really successful overall. We are so excited that all of the awardees were able to come. You know, the program itself, the A Voice program that we organized that, you know, we're really celebrating here is such an important one because of the historical materials that it provides and really giving, I think, a fuller sense of the participation of African Americans, you know, in Congress in helping to shape our democracy. But in addition to that, there are other partners, you know, former members, of course, but then also other partners who really help to provide this information, you know, to a broader range of people. And so in terms of being able to celebrate all of them today, that was also really, really tremendous. And we're always grateful to have a wonderful array of individuals coming to participate and of organizations also to support the work that we do.